at the time, I got really into like breakdancing or breaking is what we call it, breaking. And that's all I did. It was just work, train, and that, and you were just like you kind of lived. It's almost like like when you're a strength and conditioning coach, right, or anything in athletics, like you're all you want to do is that sport, right, and all you want to do is train for it. All you want to do is get better. That's exactly what my mindset was when it came to breaking, and I did that from like 19 until I got into strength and conditioning. So it was like constantly just nonstop training and working.
What's going on, Samson Strength Coach Collective listeners? On today's episode, we have assistant strength and conditioning coach at Indiana University, IU, Eddie Ramirez. Eddie, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on here. Thank you so much.
Well, dude, I'm stoked about it, seriously. And then our listeners for the past couple episodes have known that we've had a lot of guests on who we met at CSCCA. We were talking about this pre-show just a little bit. I met you. I think we talked for maybe, I don't even know if we could consider it over 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But it's like I said, this is the coolest part of the podcast is we get to sit down and they actually get to connect. Like, that's why I love doing this is, I already got a good vibe from you, right? I knew this would be somebody who'd be great to have on the podcast. And then, okay, let's actually spend some time getting to know each other. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, just exactly how you said, like the conference goes by so quick and you're
Yeah.
trying to meet everybody and you're seeing all these like old faces. So it's like, you're seeing guys from depending how long you've been in the career, like from your internships, like from your first job, your second, your mentors, whatever it is. So it's you're trying to get through as many people as you possibly can in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Because we all got to get back. Most of us, we're there for like 1-2 days. We got to get back to our schools. So we got athletes in town and stuff like that. So no, it's cool to be able to connect with people outside
For
of the
sure.
conference.
So how many years have you been in the field?
I've been in a collegiate setting for 5 years. So going
5
on my
years.
6th year right now.
Okay. How many CSCCAs have you been to?
I think this is my 4th this past
4th.
year.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So
so.
I'm just curious about this. You got me thinking about it, right? Like you said, like, depending on how long you've been in the field, there's also just more and more people you've met. I remember, I don't know if this is your experience. My first CSCCA, I went with another, coach who was a mentor, and I'm like literally like holding onto his shirt, like, please, like take me to meet people. Like, I don't know how this is. And then this past CSCCA, this is like my third one I've been to, been in the field, the collegiate sector for, about 9 years now. And it's like, it's come to a point, especially with hosting the podcast where I meet so many great people and then we get connected. I'm like, you're talking to somebody and then somebody else comes up and then you're talking to somebody else
Yeah.
and then somebody else comes up. Has that been your experience too?
Yeah, 100%. I told we had a part timer that came with us for the first time this year, and she was kind of like, "What is like? How's it going on and stuff like that?" And or what goes about like during these conferences. And then I told her I was like, "You don't realize how many people you know until you go to this conference, and then it becomes exactly like that. Like you're saying hi to one person, and you're like, holy crap, this is so and so, so I have to go say hi to them, and then you have people come up to you like, hey, like how you been? And sometimes like you lose you know, you forget names sometimes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and you're just like, "Hey, what's going on?" And you hit him with the, "What's up, buddy?" or "What's going
Yeah.
on, man?" And you remember their face and you remember the conversations you've had. You just don't forget, like, you don't remember the name. So it's for my first year where I knew maybe at the most 5 people, not including the people I was with, like, so the 3-4 people I was with, to now where I feel like I'm saying hi to somebody every couple minutes and I'm waving to somebody or chatting with somebody for 5 minutes. And it's definitely a lot of people that you don't see very often. So it's
Yeah.
kind of cool to get everybody together like that.
Yeah, that's where I pull out the absolute power move that every strength coach does, which is just, "What's up, brother? How are you, man?" Just a
Yeah.
dap up. "What's up, brother? How are
Yeah.
you?" Yeah, because I'm terrible with names too, just naturally. It's funny, the podcast guests, I can always remember their name, right? Because we do the editing or do show notes or like right now on the our listeners can't see this, right? But I'm looking directly at your Eddie Ramirez right there, so there's no way I'll never forget your name, right? But the people
Yeah.
who you have met and built these relationships with, sometimes it can be tough for sure. So I identify with you. Okay. Well, let's roll into it. Obviously, this show is not about CSCCA. It's about Eddie Ramirez. So Can you just give us a breakdown of your career, where you've been, and then what's led you to IU?
Yeah. So I started off in the private sector. I started off kind of late to the game. I mean, I don't want to put my age out there, but I'm up there, right? And I started in strength and conditioning pretty late. And I did the private sector for about 4 to 5 years, and I had a buddy of mine who ended up going to school for it, and he was kind of like, "Hey, like," or when I saw him do it, I was like, "Oh, this is like, what are you doing?" So he kind of explained to me, he was like, "Hey, like, I'm going to be a strength and conditioning coach at a college," which I didn't know. At this time, I hadn't gone to college yet. Out of high school, I went to community college for a little bit, but didn't really stay in it. And I didn't realize colleges had strength and conditioning coaches. So I kind of followed along his path and kind of followed what he was doing. And he kind of inspired me and was just like, all right, if this guy can do this, like, no offense to him, like he's a great guy. But I was like, if he can do this, like, yeah, I can do this too, like I didn't realize there was something like this. So he opened my eyes to this entire field. And, I give him a lot of credit for honestly getting me to where I am. And he's the guy who was like, hey, go take an internship before I even got accepted into my undergrad. And he was like, go take an internship. Like, you're gonna learn so much from there. And then did my internship at my first internship at Syracuse University.
Mm.
So I was there with the football team, and that was an eye opener, and that's kind of where it was for me. Um, it made me realize, like, holy crap! Like, this is something that I could do for a career. This is like, there's longevity in this. Um, Hell of an experience. Some of the guys that I interned with, I still talk to today at the conferences. Like, we will chat each other up all the time. And then I finally got accepted into my undergrad. Did my undergrad at George Mason. Did did my internships there as well. So every semester I was there, I was school, weight room, training, everything. So I spent and I treated it like a full time job. And on top of that, I had a full time job. And at that time, I was also married, so like I had all these different things going on in my life, and but like it was the coolest thing for me. Like, it was like, this is what gives me purpose. I felt purpose in it. My second internship, or I guess third in this case, was at at Texas, uh, and I did it with the football team there, and that one was in summer of 2019, and that one was for me, the nail in the coffin that I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And such a great experience. I loved it. It was, those guys out there. Yancey Knight was the head coach. He taught me so much. Adam Potts, he taught me a lot. Um, yeah, I mean, the people there were just great, and I loved it. After that, the guy who I ended up following in his footsteps, he had a job at a DT university in New Hampshire, and he ended up leaving for a different position. And he was like, "Hey, they're looking for like a strength coach. Like, do you want me to put your name in? Like, what?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not? Screw it, let's do it. It's never been in New Hampshire, but let's do this." Um, so then he got me. He kind of opened a door for me to get that position there. Um, there was three of us. So there was the full time, or the director, myself, and then a part timer, and she did throws. So it was only three of us. There was 20 something sports. Um, while it was a lot, like looking back on it, it was a lot, and but it was so much fun for me. Like, it was just like, this is great. Like, I'm working from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Like, I love this, and I'm one of those, like, if I'm a it's like a dog, right? A tired dog is a happy dog, right? And I was the exact same way. Like, a tired Eddie was a happy Eddie. And my so that part of the story was the part, or excuse me, the assistant ended up becoming the interim head coach, and did that for about a couple semesters. And then when it was time for the university to kind of hire a new head guy, they didn't go my way, so they went a different route. And so at that point, I was like, all right, I think it's time for me to kind of move on and find something, whatever the next step is for me. And I I mean, I applied at a bunch of different places and got a phone call from IU. And I also got offered the head coaching position at a D3 university in just outside of Boston. And I was like, well, what do I do? Do I take the head position? Do I take IU? Like, a lot of contemplating on what to do. And finally, it was kind of like, you can't give up the opportunity to work at a Big Ten, Power Five at the time, Power Five conference. Um, Coming from a D2 university, like I was like, that's just a huge step. So I jumped on that as quick as I could, and yeah, been here ever since.
Dude, I love it. I
Long
mean,
story, long story.
no. But those are the best stories, right? Because there's always so much behind those, and I think a lot of strength coaches have similar journeys, right? But it's always so interesting to hear about. Okay, what did he learn along the way? Like, what was the excitement behind like getting into strength and conditioning? Okay, so I'm very curious. This is a selfish question right here. You start off at Syracuse. Are you from upstate New York originally?
No, I'm from Virginia. Originally
Okay,
from Virginia, so
okay,
East
okay.
Coaster, but a little
Okay,
bit.
so I grew up in Syracuse, so I was
Okay.
curious. Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, fantastic. I'm curious about this too. You said late in the game. You said you came in late in the game. What were you doing before you started strength and conditioning?
Man. So I at the time I got really into like breakdancing or breaking is what we call it, breaking. And that's all I did. It was just work, train, and that, and you were just like you kind of lived. It's almost like like when you're a strength and conditioning coach, right, or anything in athletics, like you're all you want to do is that sport, right, and all you want to do is train for it. All you want to do is get better. That's exactly what my mindset was when it came to breaking, and I did that from like 19 until I got into strength and conditioning. So it was like constantly just nonstop training and working. Like I mean, I was working at the time I was working at Home Depot, and I had just moved to Northern Virginia. And yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was doing. And then it wasn't until my buddy I saw him do it, and I was like, all right, this is kind of I'm gonna follow that path.
So you were like competing, like national competitions, different type of stuff like that, or was it kind of more local
Uh,
stuff?
it was more local stuff. We did a lot of like kind of East Coast stuff, things. So like we would go up to Baltimore every once in a while, New York every once in a while, down to Atlanta. But we never went like me and the guys that I was with. We never went like West Coast or anything like that. And it's one of my like I guess hidden talents. When people are always
Yeah.
like, "What do you like? What do you do?" Like a party trick and stuff. And that's kind of how I started with it. It was a party trick for me. It was like, hey, I want to do this I mean, I was in high school. So I was like, oh, I want to do this to impress girls. Needless to say, like never got a girl from it, but, it was cool. It was cool to be able to do it. And it taught me a lot. It helped, it honestly like kind of molded me into the guy that I am. So then it helped me a lot when it came into strength and conditioning because it was, learning knowing that you have to go through steps in order to get through to your end result and not like rushing it, so that's
Yeah.
kind of one of the things I took from that and kind of plugged it into my programming and my style of coaching and all that.
I mean, seriously, this is so cool for me. I mean, because like, I mean, legitimately, I've had a lot of different stories. I've never heard of somebody, who was really into breaking, was a break dancer, like you said, and then, I mean, like was able to make that your life. I think it's really interesting. I'm curious, like, what do you feel about breaking in the Olympics? And do you ever feel that there could be a strength and conditioning for the breaking team at the Olympics?
I actually, since the Olympics came out, or since that Olympics, I've had that question asked so many times.
Yeah,
Um, my thing is, it's such a difficult thing to judge, and because there's no criteria, like there's no, but that's the beauty of it. Like in ballet, for instance, I always use the instance of ballet. Like when you don't do certain things, it no longer becomes ballet. It's no longer that. Same thing with jazz music or yeah, jazz or tango, whatever other kind of style of dance. Like as soon as you take away or don't implement certain things from that dance, it no longer becomes that dance. Breaking is anything and everything. I mean, I've seen people go from like ballet moves into like what we call like the original breaking moves and stuff like that, or they go from a lot of swing, so like kind of like a swing when they're doing like their footwork and stuff like that, and so like there's no there's no boundary to what breaking is, and that's what makes it so difficult, in my opinion, to put it into something like the Olympics where it gets judged. Now, granted, like there's some of the most athletic people I've ever met. They're some of the most conditioned people I've ever met. The way that they're able to contort their bodies and control their bodies is some of the most athletic stuff ever, you know? And I think there's a lot of strength and conditioning that can like kind of do its part in it. I think a lot of breakers now are doing a lot more strength training than they did in the past. And I think a lot of it's just for longevity in the sport, just like, any other sport that we have, in college, just the college setting. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it definitely plays its part. I do know Red Bull, like Red Bull has their,
Yeah.
like a strength program, a strength trainer for their Red Bull breaking team. So I do know that, and it's pretty kind of intense. Some of the stuff that they're doing, they train them almost like wrestlers,
Mhm.
because they're just. If you think about it, like wrestling is, you're using your body and contorting your body in all these different ways, right? And you have to be conditioned and not just like uh, a linear lateral, vertical uh, plane, but you got to be multi everything. So
Yeah. Well, dude, it's just again, it's very cool to me. I think it's a unique experience, right? Do you still break today?
yeah, I just do it more for fun.
Yeah.
Like I'll like sometimes I'm just like, hey, I just want to get down. So like I'll, move stuff out of the living room or I'll do it at a volleyball facility. Like, hey, I'll just throw some music on and then I'll just go a couple. I can't go as long as I used to. I'll tell you that. Like I mean, it's hella anaerobic. Like you're doing
Yeah.
it for like 30 seconds and you're gassed for a while. I definitely can't move the way I used to. So I guess my style has kind of become more um, about musicality. So trying to actually like feel the music as opposed to like, hey, I need to spin on my head and then land on my right hand and then, do this. So um, it's definitely kind of falling back a little bit, if you will. But yeah, I still do it for fun, for sure.
That's awesome. Okay, my last question about it, because I'm just curious too with the
Go
athletes.
for it.
Like, what do the athletes say when they find this out about you?
Most of the time it's, oh my God, can we see it? Hey, can you do something? Hey, can you, and it's, uh, because of the Olympics, it's always oh, can you do the worm thing or can you do this? And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Like, it's not, the worm is not that hard to do. Or like the head spin thing. And I'm like, I like, no offense, but I don't want to do a head spin on this floor right here.
Yeah.
I actually have like kind of you can't really see it, but 'cause I have pretty thick hair, but there's kind of like a slight bump here that I have. And it's like slightly bald from like spinning on
Yeah.
my head so much. So, um, but yeah, it's kind of like the first thing I get. It's, did you compete? Did you, like, what do you think about the Olympics? Hey, can you do something for us? Or yeah, occasionally you'll get like the can you teach me something? So then you're like, all right, and I've done it a couple times where I've been like, all right, today's conditioning or for today's workout today, we're gonna do this, and then I'll teach them like the basic things, and they're like, holy crap, like this is much harder than it looks. I'm like, yeah, like it's not a walk, a walk in the park.
Yeah, it's funny because my athletes, obviously, I work with basketball. They always ask me, like, okay, did you play football in college? Like, and I'm like, no, I just wrestled and do jujitsu. And so they always, whenever that happens, like, and I work with a men's team, they're always like, well, we got to wrestle. I'm like, all right, man, we can go right ahead. Like, I got bad news for you though. First of all, I have the distinct advantage of weighing at least 50 pounds more than most of you. And then on top of that, too, like you guys are great athletes. You have no clue how to use your hands or actually fight, like in a grappling sense, right? I'm sure
Yeah.
if we boxed, you could knock me out because everybody has a 7 foot wingspan, right? But like from a wrestling standpoint, so I had a guy yesterday. Uh, he came up and he tried to wrestle me. And so, I ended up putting him in a guillotine like almost immediately, right? And the team afterwards, like the guys every year, a couple guys try it, right? And then the one guy who was a returner from last year was like, "Man, I'm so upset that you haven't flipped anybody this year." And I was like, "When I flip somebody, that's how you know I'm about to lose." Like I'm like, "All right, I really actually got to pull out some stuff that might
Lock
help me
in,
win
yeah.
out." Yeah, exactly. But it's pretty similar too, and I think it's always really like what you're saying, where they want to see it or they want to wrestle, or like I have a couple guys who are like, "Can you teach me some stuff?" Like, like if this were to happen, how would I, do that? Which I think is a little bit different, right? Because you're teaching them how to express themselves through dance, and mine is like, if somebody fights you, here's what you need to do,
How
right?
to
Which
defend
is
yourself.
yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
like, don't tell anybody I taught you this, by the way. But it's really cool, I think, too, when you can kind of share something you're passionate about with your athletes, and it's a physical art form. It's something that you do that they're not aware of, but because they also have their own art form that's physical, like they can really relate to it. I always think it's really cool to share that with the athletes.
Yeah. No, no, they love it.
Yeah.
They absolutely love it.
That's awesome. Okay, so you know, you go back, you're talking about at Texas, you had, this is kind of your nail in the coffin experience of like, this is it, and I'm going to be a strength and conditioning coach for the rest of my life. Was there any specific instance that you can remember where you really thought to yourself, like, all right, strength and conditioning is for me, or was it kind of just a build up over your whole time there?
I'd say it was a buildup. I can't pinpoint like one specific moment. I mean, I think just getting up and being with those athletes. I mean, it's Texas, right? You're dealing with, some massive athletes, not just like physically, but like their personalities, their, demeanor, everything. And just kind of working with these guys was for me, I think at the end of it, I was just like, man, I can't believe I had a chance to work with, Joseph Osai or trying to think of who else, Keandre Sweat. These guys they're now in the NFL, and it's like man, these guys are some of the nicest guys I ever met, and like um, I mean, they were humble in the weight room. You know,
Hmm.
they, you know, they. I'll never forget. One of the guys, like we kind of had a discussion on me and some of the interns were like, oh, like we think this guy's gonna make it big, and I think he was a freshman or a sophomore. They might have both been sophomores, and I was like, no, I think this guy's actually going to be the guy who's going to be, make it big in the pro career. Um, and they were like, no, 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 it's going to be this dude for real. Like you just got to see him. Like he's just a monster. And don't get me wrong, like he was. Um, but it ended up being the guy who I said that was going to go, have a longer life in the pros. Like he's still in it as far as I know. And the other guy, I don't even think he made it,
Hmm.
to the pro side. And like that to me, it's just to say like, hey, this guy's hard work is impeccable to watch, and look where it's taking him,
Hmm.
and I think that is a definitely a contributing factor to me wanting to do it. And be like, these guys are they put their livelihood into this, and that is what I kind of wanted to be a part of to help them get to their goals. Because to me, that's probably the most satisfying part is that hey, you accomplished this, and I was able to be a part of that journey.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like you said, it's a piece of the journey, right? And you can help guide them, and you can help let them know that, like you said, it's the hardworking principles. Sometimes the difference between the guys who make it and who don't, or okay, is he actually a hard worker? Is he going to consistently put the work in? Some guys are just so talented that they don't have to do that, but it's so much more rare than a lot of athletes think it is. You made me think of Daryl Taylor when I was at Tennessee football. I remember we did neck training every day. And Daryl would always be like, Connor, like screaming across the weight room for me to do the manual resistance. And like
Okay.
every day, I mean, seriously, I'm dripping sweat by the time we're done. Like, and he's just crazy strong. But like the way he approached every single thing, it was no surprise to me that, like, of course, this guy's going to go pro, right? And he does. And so
Mhm.
it's really cool, I think, too, as you go across your career and you work with people who have made it to that level, and then you can see the common traits in the people who you continue to work with, right? And then you can help them know, like, hey, that's not what's going to get you there. This is what's going to get you to where you want to be, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it makes complete sense. I love hearing that. Okay, and so what teams do you have in Indiana?
So I work volleyball, swimming, men's and women's swimming, and men's golf.
Men's golf. Okay, volleyball at Indiana is obviously a huge thing, right?
Yeah,
It
and
is. It is really big.
it's
Yeah.
grown substantially in the 4 years that I've been here.
Yeah. Can you talk to me about that growth? Because I think volleyball has really, really exploded. It's really become a very popular sport. Obviously, the Big Ten is the highest the highest level you can get. Like it's incredibly competitive. Everybody knows that Big Ten volleyball is where it's at. Like, can you just talk to me about the growth that you've seen in the sport over the past 4 years?
Yeah, no, I mean you're right. I mean the Big Ten is the creme de la creme, right? I always tell people like I'm working with the Lamborghinis and the Marcialagos of the volleyball world. And at Indiana, obviously Big Ten again, it's the volleyball conference. that you want to be a part of. And in Indiana, like we, notoriously have never been that great at the sport. Like we've been okay, but just never been, as good as, Purdue, as much as I hate to say that. Um, but my first year here, like it was, hey, we gotta change the culture. We gotta change the culture. If you want to be competitive, we've got to be competitive in all aspects of it. And I kind of took that when I had my conversations with Steve, the head coach, and ran with it. And was like, hey, we got to make these girls as competitive as you possibly can. And I think the first talk that I had with the girls that I was with at the time was, hey, like I am going to be your best friend. I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader. However, like I've got to push you mentally and physically. Like if you want to be able to compete with these, big name um like universities, the Wisconsins, the Purdue's, the Nebraskas, like they have so much talent and they rely heavily on that talent. And not to say our girls aren't talented, but the way that you're going to beat a team like that, or be competitive against a team like that, is by having a little bit of grit, by
Hmm.
having grit, by being getting a little bit getting a little nasty if you need to, in terms of like when you're training and how we're preparing ourselves. And that's kind of something that I've instilled year in and year out with all the girls that I've come across. It's like, hey, like we're going to be put in uncomfortable positions, and it's going to suck. Like I'm not going to tell you and sugarcoat it and be like, oh, we're going to be okay, and it's going to be frolicking through a field. Like, no, this is going to suck. And it's not because I hate you guys. It's not because I think you guys are out of shape, but it's because we've got to have a little bit of extra, um, when we are competing against these big name teams.
Hmm.
And I think year in and year out, I think the girls have kind of bought into it. I think the coaches have bought into it. The conversation I have with the coaches, it's never about, hey, we've got to fix this or we've got to fix that. Like there haven't been any issues, thankfully. It's more about like, hey, what more can we do to prepare these girls? And I think that's a huge part. It's like working collectively as a staff, not just myself, but our athletic trainer, our dietitian, our sports psych, and the coaches, and be like, hey, we're doing X, Y, and Z. Is there anything else? Does anybody have any other suggestions or recommendations that we can add? Maybe it's a book talk. Maybe it's a, hey, let's do, and I've had this, conversation with them before, and they're like, hey, can we do maybe over the summertime, like, can we do competitive games at this point, so I think amongst us all, like working together kind of to build that culture, from the inside out. And year in and year out, it's kind of been better. It's gotten better year after year. You get people that graduate that were kind of a part of the old part of it, and you're getting in this new crop of athletes and these new crop of girls, and you're like, hey, let's from the freshmen that I had or sophomores that I had, it's like, hey, this is the culture we want. This is the standard that we want. Year in and year out, we're going to raise that standard, and we live up to that standard. And we don't drop below it. And if we do, like I remind them and I let them know, and it's like, hey, like we got to get back to where we were, and then be better from that point. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. It's been I've fallen in love with the sport. This is a sport I've never worked with, and it's kind of why I wanted the sport. When I got to Indiana, I was like, the only two sports I've never worked with were, I think, field hockey, diving, and volleyball. And so I was like, I'm gonna take volleyball. So yeah, I mean, it's
And
been
here we
great.
are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and here we
there
are.
you go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, obviously, a lot of coaches have different philosophies on how to develop grit or how to increase competitiveness. Like, I mean, before I ask this question, if you work in the Big Ten or if you're involved with volleyball, you got to shut it off while we answer it, and then I'll tell you when you can come back and listen in. Right? We're not giving away any secrets, but what are the things that you do from a specific level to help develop that grit?
I think a part of it is just kind of understanding where they're coming from, and then having them understand that the tough times are going to pass. That the tough moments when whether you're in a game and you're losing the set, or you're coming from behind, or if we're doing conditioning, or if we're going hard in practice, like, yes, it's going to suck at that moment, but it's going to pass and it's going to be okay. And I think part of it is, working with females, like, you can't necessarily, like, you know, treat them the way you do males sometimes. But I think, like I mentioned, like, showing them that it's going to be okay. I think part of it is having that vulnerability within yourself to be able to say, like, hey, like, I've gone through this stuff before. Like, I let the girls know, like, hey, I've gone through tough times. Like, I understand when, the world seems like it's against you. How I understand when perhaps it feels like all the bad moments outweigh the good. But at the end of it, like, you're going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. And, you know, rely heavily on those people next to you, because they're the ones that go through the exact same thing as you. And you guys go through it together, and nobody knows what you're going through except for them. It's like, hang on to those people. Like, make sure those people are uplifting you, uplift them, whether it's a, hey, good job, or hey, how are you doing? Like, that's what's going to make you, um, that's what's going to make those gritty moments, those like tough moments that you're going through, a lot easier.
Mm, yeah. I think back to one of my training partners I had for wrestling, and he wrestled at Cornell, which is obviously a really high level institution for
Yeah.
wrestling. And I remember we were going through, and I was being soft, right? And I was like, man, I'm tapped out. Like, like practice is over. We're trying to get extra reps in. And I was terrible, by the way. So like, I knew I wasn't going to college for this. And like, I'm literally just a body for this guy to practice with. And I remember we kind of just had a conversation. He said almost the exact same thing you said right there too, right? Which is like, at some point this is going to end, right? Like, at some point this pain or discomfort I'm feeling is going to end. And so how am I going to feel when I'm done with it, right? Am I going to feel proud of myself with everything that I did? Or am I going to be disappointed and know that I could have done more? Like, and I'm the only one who knows exactly what I can give every single time. And so
Mhm.
if I don't live to that potential, I'm not going to be successful. And I was like, damn, you're right. And then of course I was like, well, I'm not, I'm not built like that at this level. I need some time to get there. And then he said another funny thing to me too. And he was like, I mean, and I'll tell you what, if I push myself so hard I die, I didn't know I died. He's like, I just moved on. He's like, so it is what it is. He's like, it's either going to end in a positive way or I'm dead and I didn't know. And I was like, all right, you're nuts, man. Like, but obviously a really, really high level and really successful athlete. Like, I think those are the things, and that's what our job is, right? Is to help unlock that in athletes and help them understand, like, this is truly the time where you can't have any regrets. Like, you can't look back and say, man, I should have done more, because when you do that, then it's just an excuse too, right? At the end of the day, you're like, well, I didn't win because I didn't do more. And it's like, sometimes you don't win just because you weren't good enough, but the only solace you have is I did every single possible thing I could to give myself a chance to win too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Okay. And so obviously volleyball is a really high level international, sport, especially swimming and diving too. You're going to have some international athletes come in there. Uh,
Mhm.
you know, I know we've talked about this just previously a little bit pre-show, but you've been interested or have kind of developed a new system for working with international athletes. Can you walk me through what that looks like? What are the main things that you focus on with them? How do you approach training international athletes?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, especially being here at IU. Like, you're right. I mean, I get tons of different international athletes, especially with swim. And, the conversations that I've had with a lot of them, it's just been kind of like, hey, how are you adapting to like life in the US? Like, it's completely different, right? I mean, living here in the US, especially in the Midwest, is a whole different animal than, being from Madrid, Spain, or being from Singapore, or being from even, as well, I guess maybe not Canada, but like, I guess depending on what part of Canada you're from. Um, and it's a lot of the time that I talked to them, it was like, yeah, I'm feeling homesick. Yeah, I feel like I'm not really adapting well. I feel like I'm not able to um, assimilate the way I want to. And so I kind of from there was, did a little bit of research and kind of like talked a little bit with, particularly with like my family. Like, my parents are from Mexico, and was kind of like, hey, like, what have you guys done, and kind of what helped you guys the most, like when my parents first came to this country. Um, And the one thing they told me was like it was people um trying to speak Spanish to them, right? Because
Mm,
they didn't speak a lot of English when they came here. And I was like, okay, like that's an interesting thing. So what I've done is whenever I do have an international athlete, regardless of where they're from, like I try to learn as much of the language as I possibly can, um, and just kind of speak to them, like whether it's a good morning in Turkish or good morning in um, Spanish, which is a little bit easier for me, but but like good morning in Italian. How are you doing in Italian? Right? It helps them feel more comfortable, especially in a place where a lot of international students don't have weight rooms the way we do. And now we're throwing them in there and like, hey, you've got to lift weights with all these um, American girls who have seen weight rooms like this and have seen universities. Um, it makes them feel more like they can let their guard down, right?
mm,
Because they're like, oh, okay, this person's trying to understand me, trying to meet me, kind of in the middle. And just kind of slowly speaking, like I said, like, "Hello, how are you?" Like, "How's your day?" Like, just learning basic things like that, goes a long way with a lot of these athletes. And I think a lot of the time it's just because they just miss home. They miss home, they miss their families, like, they don't have, um at the beginning, they don't have that family here yet, and hopefully through time, like, that team becomes a family, but just giving them a little bit of a kind of that space to be themselves and not feel like they have to assimilate like that within a week. I think it's a huge thing. And then when it comes to the weightlifting, it's just letting them know, like, hey, like you don't have to be at the level of the person next to you in a month. This is not
mm.
a you have to reach this point at by this or excuse me this level at this point. Um, a lot of time it's just explaining to them. It's like, hey, like we're gonna break this down as much as we possibly can. And if it takes us the entire year for you to learn how to do a high pull, so be it.
Mhm.
And you just take it step by step. You take it step by step. You take it week by week, and you just let them know, like, hey, like you've improved from last week, but we're not quite ready yet. Right? We're not quite ready to have you do a full clean, or we might not be completely ready for you to do X, Y, and Z, and that's okay. Like you're not, letting them know, like my goal isn't to sit here and make you the best Olympic lifter or the strongest person possible. It's just simply to just get your body prepared, right, for your sport. That's why you're here. And yeah, I mean, it's been interesting to be able to work with all these different internationals. Um, but that's kind of the route that I've been taking, and it's been good. And I'm still trying to learn what else I can do to help make that adjustment period significantly shorter than what it is. Because a lot of the times in the conversations that I've had with them, it takes them like a year. It takes them a year, 2 years for them to finally feel comfortable, right? And a lot of them they go home, right? They go home for the summertime and they kind of lose that, um, or better yet, they just get more homesick because they're like, man, I just want to be back home with my family. Um, so yeah, I mean that's kind of the route that I've been taking.
Yeah. I love the meeting them where they're at, right? And just trying to I think it could be very easy to just assume, right, this is just another athlete coming in, right? Versus
Yes.
this is somebody whose entire life has changed and then is now getting introduced to a complete different system as well. So they have two things going on versus one thing for a new athlete coming in that's from the States. I really love trying to speak their language too. It's cracking me up because I think back to we just had a player come in from France, just started playing with us this week. 7 foot tall guy. He's really nice. We've been getting along really well so far. And so I asked him, we were just like in the casual conversation. I was like, talking about, hey man, you got to be high T, right? You got to have high testosterone. And I was like, how do you say testosterone in French? And he's like, testosterone. And I was like, okay, all right, And then I mentioned I pointed somebody else out, and I was like, yeah, like or one of the assistant coaches. I was like, yeah, so I man crush, like just making a joke. And I was like, how do you say crush in French? He's like, crush. And I was like, all right, we got to sit down. We got to find some words that I can actually learn because this is
Yeah.
ridiculous, you know? But it's just funny, you know, too. But then I think what it was cool about it too, for me was just like, all right, we're not that different, you know, like it feels like you're from a
Mhm.
completely different world. Like we're all human beings though. And your culture isn't that completely different than I thought it would be. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think of another instance too, where we had an international player. She was from Senegal, you know, and I found out after like 6 months that everybody's pronouncing her name wrong, right? Like for 6 months, everybody's
Yeah.
been saying her name wrong. And she was pretty shy. She never really spoke up and said anything about it. And I was like, hey, like, how do I say your first name? Like, I want to make sure I'm getting it right. And everybody was saying like Khadija, right? And she's like, it's technically Khadija. And I was like, okay. And then her last name was Fi. And everybody pronounced it Faye, like every single person, right? And she's like one of our, she was a really high level player, and so every single second, you know, it's everybody's like, "Hey, Hattie Faye, Hattie Faye," and then I remember the first time I called her Fi, she was like, "Thank you." Like, I really appreciate it, right? Like, and it
Yeah.
seems simple, but it's just like there's small things that you can do to make people feel more comfortable, and it ends up making a big difference in the long run.
No, yeah, I agree. I agree. To piggyback on that, it's like I'll ask the athletes like how do I say squat or how do I say hinge or something like that or how do I say like keep your chest up, you know? And in that way, like when I'm across the room, I can yell that in their language, and they're like, "Oh, okay, he's talking to me."
Yeah.
Um, so that yeah, I agree with you on that part. Like the trying to learn as much of the language as you can.
What's the most interesting language you've had to learn so far?
Oh, um, Russian was pretty hard.
Yeah, I'm
I
sure.
learned how to speak Russian. That one was difficult. At the D2 university I was at, there was somebody that spoke Russian. Um, I actually like that language a lot, though. That was a pretty cool language to learn. Trying to think what else. Probably Turkish. Turkish
Yeah,
was pretty difficult. Um, and then yeah, that's probably the two hardest ones. We
I'm
got a lot of
sure.
like Spanish people like to speak Spanish, so like yeah, that's I'm pretty comfortable with that. So like I don't have to worry about that too much. But um, yeah, I would say Turkish and Russian were probably the two hardest ones I had to learn
Yeah,
or
yeah.
learn basics of.
I'm sure. Are you bilingual? Are you able
Ye-
to? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So I'm sure you. I'm sure that's just a next level connection that you can have immediately, right? When you can speak their language completely.
yeah. No, it's great. It's helped me a lot. It's helped me significant. Like I don't know a lot of the terms in Spanish, like when it comes to like weight room stuff, weight room body parts, like that anatomy, that kind of thing, because I never learned that. But it's so helpful for me to be able to when we do get an international, or even like some of my coworkers when they get internationals and they're like, "Hey Eddie, can you kind of explain this to them?" So I'm like, "Yeah, sure, cool." So I'll go over and talk to them and just kind of like speak to them in Spanish and be like, "Hey, this is what they want you to do. This is kind of what they're looking for." So they find that helpful too.
Yeah. Yeah, the same French player we have another player from Switzerland, who is I think he's, like, quadlingual. I think he can speak 4 languages, I'm pretty
Oh
sure,
yeah, those
right?
guys speak like eight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and so, he obviously speak English really well, and then he knows French, and so he was working with our French player on the sideline, like, just translating, you know, pretty much everything the coaches were asking to, and so it was fun to see, like, okay, at least we have somebody here who can really help him out, right? You
yeah.
know, and it's really nice to have that person who could be kind of a buffer or a little bit somebody who can be there to help them. Okay, so I'm curious about this too. You know, it's been 4 years at IU now. Is that correct?
Hmm.
Okay, you're going into another year. What is something you're looking to improve upon? You know, there's always something that coaches want to get better at in this upcoming year. What is something you're looking to hone your craft at or get better in this upcoming year?
Oh man, that's a good question. Um, hmm. I would say probably GPS things.
Mm,
Like we're using Catapult right now with volleyball, and this is our second year using it. First year, obviously, it's a lot of like trial and error and like or just collecting data. Um, that was one area that I've never really had a lot of experience with, and I've been trying to learn more as much as I possibly can because I know it'll help me in the long run. Like, and I know it's just another tool to add to my, you know, my toolbox, and just learning that, you know, picking brains, figuring out how other people are using it, figuring out what's the best way to use it, and yeah, just trying to get as much information as I possibly can from that. So I would say that that's kind of like the area that I want to excel in better.
Yeah. No, oh my goodness, I need to get so much better at it, right? And so it's funny you bring that up too. We have a lot of parallels with what's going on in both of our lives right now. We have a new women's basketball GA who came in, and he was in they use Connects on, the men's team doesn't. And so the women's team is getting ready to get ready for practice, and he's like, "How do I set this up?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, we can figure this out. It's no problem, right?" And then we go to set it up, and I'm like, "I have no clue. Like, I don't have any idea." And he was asking me a couple questions, and I was like, Stefan, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I don't know. Like I really I was like,
Yeah.
I couldn't answer a single question for you right now. Like I don't even know how to start the units. And so it's just so interesting to me because I remember there was a lot of things that when I was first coming up my career, you have to focus on this. These are the things you have to be really good at. And now I
No.
feel like the GPS or the data tracking or sports science is one of the things that a lot of people are coming up with initially, and they have a lot of experience in it for the younger coaches. And now I'm like, okay, this is something I got to go get better on it myself. Like
Uh,
I got to go spend the time on it. So we've got a lot of parallels. I can identify with a lot of what you're saying today.
yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
All right. Well, I've got one last question for you. And,
Cool.
you were an intern at Syracuse, so you may not have had that much time to go out and eat, but favorite restaurant while you were up in Syracuse?
Oh man. All right. I don't remember the name of it, but there was this barbecue place. I think it was like a
Dinosaur
dinosaur.
barbecue?
Yeah,
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 there we go.
yeah.
That was
Awesome
probably
spot.
the best spot in Syracuse. Now I will say like upstate New York barbecue is definitely not as good
No, no,
as
not
like
Texas. Yeah,
Texas
you're not
barbecue
going to
or
Austin,
even
Texas. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, or even like I mean on the East Coast in Virginia we do a lot of pork. So like our
Yeah.
pork barbecues, pulled pork is amazing. Um, but yeah, I would say Dinosaur was probably the best. Dinosaur Barbecue was probably the best place I ate while I was up
Yeah.
in Syracuse.
I will say Dinosaur is probably one of the few places that does it right. Like, I'm not eating
Yeah,
barbecue if I go up north. I'm eating chicken wings, right? Like that's going to be the special. That's the thing I really care about, or pizza, or bagels. But then like when I come down south, I'm also not trying to get a Philly cheesesteak. There's certain
yeah,
places who do stuff right. And so you can find a decent cheesesteak. I think. But Dinosaur barbecue is good barbecue, but it's not like you said, if we go over to like Terry Black's, or something
yeah, yeah,
in Austin, it's a very, very different situation for
for
sure.
sure,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, Eddie, thank you so much for coming on, man. Seriously, it's been great to get to know you better. It's been great to hear about your experiences, and I always say this at the end of every podcast, man. But like, it's so great for me to do this. I call it my continuing education, right? People are like, "What are you doing today?" I'm like, I'm about to be on my continuing education. Don't worry.
Yeah,
But it helps me grow and it helps me get better. And when you mentioned wanting to talk about international athletes, I was like, yeah, heck yes, because this is something I need to grow in, and we have a couple of different international athletes I need to work with this year. So I appreciate everything, man. It's been great to get to know you. Thank you for coming on.
no, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me on, and it's great to kind of give my story. I think it's I'm hoping from this like a lot more people kind of I feel like not to say like every podcast is the same, but it's like, you want people to kind of be different, right?
Hmm.
And you want to hear different stories and hopefully this encourages people to not be afraid of necessarily kind of getting on a podcast and just kind of letting yourself talk
Yes.
and free flow it. So thank you. So I appreciate it. And I got a feeling like next conference, like I'm gonna get somehow called out like, oh Eddie, you better do some breaking or
Yeah.
something like that. So I can expect that. So I got a year to prepare for it, I
I'm
guess.
sure that'll be the case. Yeah. And if they ask you to do a head spin, I'll elbow him in the ribs and I'll say, "Hey man, he doesn't do that." All right. It's gotta be the right time, right place. So yeah, but no, I think that's a great point you bring up too. And I appreciate that. Right. Like it's fun I try to make it fun to be on here. I hope you had a good time, but I think you have a really unique story and a really cool story. And I'm glad you got to share it. And it energizes me, always re-energizes me to hear people's stories. And I can tell you, we've definitely never had a breaker on before. So this is definitely a first for the podcast. So thank you, man. I appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.